15 years, 3 kids, and one simple question. Why did my wife suddenly start calling herself by another name? She wore perfume to buy milk, and one night, she called herself Jenna. My wife's name is Elise. Suspicion doesn't scream, it whispers. And sometimes, it whispers loud enough to drown everything else out. I thought I misheard her at first. We were at the grocery store. She was chatting with a cashier, laughing, carefree, and then she introduced herself as Jenna. Her name is Elise, not Elizabeth, not Jenny. Elise. It was such a small thing, almost absurd, but it stuck to the roof of my mind like peanut butter, and it didn't shake loose. That night, while brushing her teeth, I asked about it. She shrugged, said it was a joke, just being silly, but she didn't laugh. That was the first time I noticed her hesitation. It started small, quiet phone calls in the garage, her smile tightening whenever I asked about her day. After over a decade together, I knew her rhythms, and these weren't hers. Elise didn't take calls in the garage. Elise didn't jump when I entered the room. And Elise certainly didn't lock her phone with a code she hadn't used since college. I told myself not to pry, that it was probably stress. Work had been tough, our youngest was starting kindergarten, and sometimes people just changed. But the more I tried to ignore it, the louder the doubts became. Her voice used to hum with warmth when she said my name. Now it felt like she was reading it from a list. One morning, I noticed she left early. No kiss goodbye, no whispered have a good day, like she used to. Just a half-empty cup of coffee and the faint trace of a perfume I didn't recognize. Not floral, not sweet, spicy. Sharp, like something worn for someone else. Later that week, I caught her humming in the kitchen. Some song I didn't recognize. I asked about it, and she blinked, confused, like she'd just woken up from somewhere else. Just a tune from the radio, she said, but I checked. It wasn't on the radio. It was the way she dressed, too. Subtle at first. A little more effort for quick errands. A new shade of lipstick she swore she'd always had. Heels she hadn't worn in years, paired with jeans that didn't look comfortable, just flattering. The tipping point came one night when she said, "I'll be home late, going out with Chloe." Chloe moved to Denver 6 months ago. That was the first real lie, and I didn't call her out on it. I just nodded, smiled, and said, "Have fun," because I needed to be sure, because doubt wasn't enough. Doubt could be paranoia, but proof has weight, proof has gravity. And if I was going to survive what I was starting to suspect, I needed gravity to keep me grounded. But here's the thing no one tells you about suspicion. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It gnaws. It turns ordinary moments into riddles. She started calling herself Jenna when I wasn't supposed to hear. She wore perfume that didn't belong in our home. She lied about her best friend, and I pretended not to notice, because I wasn't ready to fall through the floor. Not yet, but I could already feel the cracks. She said she was working late, but I found glitter on her coat and a receipt from a hotel. Explanations don't come with glitter, and hotels don't hand out receipts unless you've stayed. She said I was too good to her. I believed her. Right up until I realized she wasn't talking about me. Not a conference center. Not a restaurant. A hotel. That moment didn't feel like a discovery. Felt like waking up underwater. I stood there in the hallway, her coat in one hand, the receipt in the other. My kids were asleep down the hall. The dishwasher was humming in the background, and I was staring at undeniable proof that something had shifted. And not in the way couples grow apart. No, this was sharper, colder, like finding a key to a room I didn't know existed in my own house. The story she told that night was airtight. Client dinner ran long, she said, toeing off her heels like she hadn't just walked through hell in them. I was with Megan, you remember Megan, the one from logistics? We had to smooth over some billing issues. And then, almost as if scripted, "Why are you looking at me like that?" I didn't say a word. Couldn't. Because the scent trailing behind her wasn't hers. Elise wore subtle fragrances. Vanilla, soft florals. This one was bold, musky, and unfamiliar. And her coat? It had glitter on the collar. Tiny flecks like stars scattered in a place they didn't belong. She showered that night before touching me. She never used to do that. And when she crawled into bed, her phone tucked under the pillow instead of resting on the nightstand. I knew, and yet, I didn't move. I just lay there beside her, studying the rise and fall of her breath, the relaxed curve of her mouth in sleep. And I asked myself the question no one wants to face. Was this the first time, or just the first time she got careless? The next morning I checked her purse. Not because I wanted to, because I needed to. And there it was. A small, glossy receipt from a boutique hotel downtown. 1 room, 1 night, paid in cash. The timestamp was just after midnight. She'd said she was stuck in traffic at that exact time. I stood there in the kitchen holding the slip of paper like it was radioactive. Part of me wanted to believe there was an explanation. Some reason that didn't involve another man. Some alternate truth where she wasn't betraying everything we'd built. But explanations don't come with glitter. And hotels don't hand out receipts unless you've stayed. That night I didn't confront her. I made her favorite dinner instead. Lasagna. Garlic bread with too much butter. I poured her a glass of wine and asked about her day. She smiled, thanked me, leaned across the table to kiss my cheek. "You're too good to me," she said. And I just nodded, wondering who she was kissing the night before. The worst part wasn't the lie. It was how comfortable she seemed in it. Like this wasn't the first time she'd done it. Like this wasn't the first time I'd missed the signs. She mixed up our anniversary date and then laughed it off like we'd just met. She didn't forget the date. She forgot who she was with. Some memories aren't shared. They're borrowed. And eventually, the seams show. It was supposed to be a throwaway moment, a late-night conversation while folding laundry, talking about how long we'd been together. I said, 15 years next month, and she blinked, confused. "No, it's in June," she said. "It's not. It never was. We got married on a rainy day in May, I remember, because the minister forgot his umbrella and joked that it was good luck. I still have the damn tuxedo to prove it." But Elise looked so certain. So casual in her correction. When I reminded her, she just laughed and said, "Well, close enough." Close enough? It felt like someone spelling your name wrong on a gravestone. After that, the little errors began to pile up. I asked her the name of the restaurant where we had our first date. She hesitated, then smiled and said, "Giovanni's." We've never been to Giovanni's. Our first date was at a diner called Molly's. Booth by the window. She had a milkshake, vanilla, extra whipped cream. She dipped her fries into it, said it was a tradition from childhood. I remember thinking, God, I hope she's mine forever. Apparently, she doesn't remember it at all. When I pointed it out, she tilted her head, amused. "Are you sure you're not mixing it up with someone else?" And that's when I knew. That's when it hit me, not like a slap, but like a slow fall downstairs. Not painful at first, just disorienting. A kind of numb disbelief. I hadn't gotten it wrong. She had. And she was trying to rewrite our history to match her fiction. That night, I started writing things down. Every inconsistency. Every detail that didn't line up. Not out of paranoia, but out of necessity. Because the woman beside me was slipping away, or maybe she already had. She told me she was going to a team-building retreat next weekend. I nodded. Smiled. Asked where. She said, "The lake house." We don't have a lake house. And her company doesn't do retreats. But I didn't push. I just added it to the list. There's a moment in every unraveling where silence becomes more damning than words. Her laughter used to fill our home like sunlight through windows. Now it echoed hollow, mismatched, like it didn't belong to her anymore. Or maybe it never did. She said she was at a seminar, but her GPS showed she'd been 200 miles away. She said she went to a seminar. Her GPS said she went missing. The cabin was real. So was the dinner for two. The lie was pretending I didn't already know. It wasn't even hidden. That was the strangest part. Like she hadn't expected me to look. Or worse, like she didn't care if I did. She left Friday morning with a duffel bag, a kiss on the cheek, and a smile so casual it hurt. Just a weekend training upstate, she said. Boring stuff, but required. I believed her. At least, I tried to. But something didn't sit right. She packed perfume for a 2-day seminar and heels she hadn't worn in years. The car came back Sunday night. Mud on the tires, salt on the windshield. But her shoes were spotless. I don't know what made me check the GPS history. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the way she hummed while unpacking, the same song I once caught her humming on a work night weeks before. Or maybe it was just the way she wouldn't meet my eyes when I asked how it went. She told me it was dull. Lectures, PowerPoints, terrible hotel coffee. But the GPS said she drove south. Not to a hotel. Not to a seminar. To a secluded cabin near the coast, a place we'd never been together. I zoomed in on the map, followed the dotted red path her car took. Not once did it veer near the conference center she'd listed on her itinerary. I looked at the timestamps. Hours of idle time parked at that cabin. And then something even colder, her phone's call log was wiped. Clean. As if the weekend never happened. Except the car remembered. When I asked her, casually, what the sessions were about, she said team synergy and digital platforms. Too fast. Too prepared. I nodded, poured her a glass of wine. She thanked me with a tired smile, the kind people wear when they think they've gotten away with something. I asked if anyone else went. She blinked. No, just me. It was quiet. A moment later, she added, good to clear my head. She said she was alone. But the receipt I found in the center console, dinner for two. It wasn't the lie that hurt the most. It was the ease with which she told it. The way her voice didn't crack. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, sipped her wine, and changed the subject like deception had become muscle memory. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because now I knew the truth had sharp corners. And I needed gloves to handle it. I placed a recorder under her seat. What I heard made my skin crawl. She didn't just betray me. She became someone else to do it. I married Elise. But someone named Melissa was driving her car. It wasn't a proud moment, crouched in the cold garage, slipping a tiny black device beneath the driver's seat like I was wiring a car for surveillance. But suspicion turns you into things you never thought you'd be: quiet, careful, paranoid. Desperate. I needed to know. Because doubt is a slow poison. It doesn't kill you quickly, it just eats away at your mind, cell by cell, memory by memory. So I planted the recorder. And the next morning after she left, I sat in the garage with headphones in, listening to her drive away. At first, it was just silence. The rumble of the engine. The turn signal clicking. A soft yawn. Then, her voice. But not the voice I knew. This was lighter. Sweeter. Like the way someone speaks when they're in a world that doesn't include consequences. And it wasn't for me. Morning, baby, she said. A pause. Then laughter. No, I'm serious, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I stopped the recording. My fingers were trembling. Then I pressed play again. Because if this was going to break me, I wanted to hear every second of the impact. She spoke for 20 minutes. Not to me, not to anyone I recognized. Her words floated out of the speakers like knives disguised as cotton. And then came the part one wasn't prepared for. He asked her what her name was. I could barely make out his voice, muffled, filtered through the ambient sounds of the road. She giggled. Melissa, she said. Just call me Melissa. Melissa. I'd never heard her say that name before. It wasn't a middle name. It wasn't a joke. It was a costume. And she wore it like it fit. I sat there in the garage long after the recording ended, surrounded by tools I used to trust. A hammer, a wrench, a jack. Things that were supposed to fix. But nothing in this house could fix what I just heard. The woman I married called herself by another name. She played house with me and played fantasy with someone else. It wasn't just infidelity. It was identity theft. That night, she came home humming. The same song is always light, nostalgic, like something from a romantic comedy. I watched her from the kitchen doorway as she unpacked groceries. She looked the same. Wore the same clothes. Smiled the same smile. But I knew what was underneath now. Her name wasn't Elise anymore. At least, not to him. If she had a second life, was ours ever real? She said she couldn't keep up the lie. I just didn't realize the lie was me. If you peel away enough layers of a person, at some point you wonder if there was anything real underneath. I stood in the hallway holding our wedding photo, the one she insisted on framing in silver. Her smile beamed from the glass like a memory that never happened, eyes bright, veil slightly crooked from the wind that day. I used to love that imperfection. It made the photo feel alive. Now it made me nauseous, because I wasn't sure that woman existed anymore. The hardest part wasn't what I'd heard on the recording. It wasn't even the name Melissa. It was the way she said it. Like it was a relief. Like Elise had become a costume and she'd finally slipped it off. I couldn't stop replaying her words. I can't keep up this lie forever. She wasn't talking about a mistake. She was talking about a life. Our life. And it hit me in a way I didn't expect. What if none of it had ever been real? The late night conversations. The inside jokes. The way she used to rest her head on my chest and hum until she fell asleep. Were those pieces of her, or just borrowed lines from a script she was tired of performing? I paced the living room, gripping the recorder in one hand, the photo in the other. A war raged in my chest. One part of me screaming for confrontation. The other whispering doubt. What if I was wrong? What if it was all some twisted misunderstanding? What if I confronted her and she turned it back on me? What if she cried, made me feel like the villain for digging, for spying? But then I remembered the dinner receipt, the hotel cabin, the wrong anniversary date, and the worst one, Melissa. I hadn't spoken to anyone about it. Not yet. Not a friend, not even my brother. Because once you say it out loud, it becomes real. And there's no going back from that. I told myself I was protecting my family. But really, I was protecting myself. Because admitting I'd been lied to for this long meant admitting I didn't really know the woman sleeping beside me. That I'd been living in a carefully curated dream and she held the remote. I found myself watching her in ways I never had before. How she laughed at her phone, how she paused before answering questions. How she said, "I love you," like someone quoting a line from a play they'd already auditioned for. And every time I tried to gather the courage to ask her, something stopped me. Because if she told the truth, everything would collapse. And if she lied again, I'd never be able to look at her the same way. So instead, I stayed silent. And in that silence, I started to disappear. Her phone was locked, but her glove compartment wasn't. She changed her name. I changed forever. The moment you question your own child's face, that's when you realize you've already lost her. It started with something simple. I needed the registration papers for her car. She'd parked in a no-standing zone and asked me to grab them while she made dinner. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. Until I opened the glove compartment. Tucked beneath old fast food napkins and a worn-out insurance card was a small envelope. Thick. Heavier than it should have been. I almost didn't open it. Almost. Inside was a second ID. Same photo. Same face. Different last name. I froze. The name wasn't Elise Mitchell. It was Elise Brooks. A name I'd never heard. A life I didn't recognize. Beneath the ID was a prepaid phone. No lock screen. Just a wallpaper of some lake I'd never seen before. I didn't check the messages, not yet. My hands were already shaking. Under that was the final piece. A birth certificate. But not for any of our children. Different name. Different father's signature. My breath hitched as I stared at it, my brain tripping over itself trying to explain it away. A niece? A relative? But her name was on it, listed as the mother. And the birth date? Less than a year before our first child was born. That was the moment. Not the receipts. Not the glitter or the perfume or even the voice recorder. This was the moment I stopped being a husband trying to hold his marriage together and became something else entirely. A man trying to survive the truth. I took photos of everything. Every page. Every signature. Every clue. Then I closed the glove compartment and walked back into the house like nothing had changed, like the ground beneath me hadn't just cracked wide open. She kissed my cheek. I smiled back. I'd spent weeks questioning her. But now, I started questioning everything, including the bloodline of the children I raised. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I ordered private DNA tests. One for each of the kids. Quiet. Discreet. Mail-in. Just swabs and barcodes and truths waiting to be confirmed. I didn't want to know, but I had to know. Because if she had a second identity, how many of our memories were real? How many of our children were mine? None of the children were biologically mine. She didn't just lie to me, she erased me from my own story. I was a father in every way except the only one that counted in a courtroom. The envelope arrived exactly 1 week later. Plain. Clinical. No warning label for the kind of devastation it carried. I sat in the parking lot of the testing center, the envelope resting on my lap like a ticking bomb. I remember the way the world looked outside my windshield, gray, quiet, almost unaware. Somewhere inside, I think I hoped for a delay. A wrong address. Anything. But it was addressed to me. And the answers were inside. My hands trembled as I opened it. I didn't read the results line by line. My eyes just scanned, jumping from one name to the next. Probability of paternity, 0%. Once. Then twice. Then 3 times. 3 children. 3 lives. 15 years. 0 connection. My throat tightened. My lungs refused to fill. I wasn't even crying. I just stopped breathing. Like grief had vacuumed the oxygen from the air. I'd always believed betrayal came with some warning, an affair, a confession, maybe even a fight. But this wasn't that. This was genocide by silence. She hadn't just cheated. She'd rewritten biology. Built a family on foundations that didn't include me, not even my blood. And for 15 years, I'd read bedtime stories, packed lunches, bandaged scraped knees, never knowing I was just playing a role in someone else's script. I stared at the results again. My name looked foreign now. Like it didn't belong on the same page as theirs. Had I been anything more than a placeholder? I wanted to scream. To punch the steering wheel. to burn every photo in the house. But instead, I sat still. Still because the weight of it was too heavy for rage. Still because I knew the moment I moved, this would become real. Still because there were 3 children sleeping in my home that night, calling me dad, and now I didn't even know what that word meant anymore. The woman I loved had built a life out of lies. And I had loved her for it. That was the cruelest truth of all. She cried when I confronted her, but not out of guilt. It was fear. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She begged for silence. I was never her husband. Just the safest lie she ever told. There was no grand explosion. No screaming match or shattered dishes. Just silence. The kind that swallows everything. I laid the papers on the table, the DNA results, the photo of her second ID, the transcript from the recorder. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. She stared at them, wide-eyed, her mouth parted like she might lie instinctively out of habit. But she didn't. She just sank into the chair, buried her face in her hands, and started crying. Not the cry of someone grieving the hurt they caused. The cry of someone who's been caught. You were just the safest option, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not best. Not only. Safest. I didn't react. I couldn't. There was nothing left to defend. She went on, desperate, flailing, tossing explanations like life preservers into a sea I had no interest in swimming anymore. It wasn't about love, she said. It was about stability. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because it made sense now. Every kiss. Every half-truth. Every time she smiled like she was somewhere else. It wasn't a marriage. It was a shelter. And I was the roof. When I said I was leaving, she panicked. Not over me. Over the consequences. Don't go to the police, she said. Please. The paperwork, the certificates, it was complicated. I didn't mean for it to get this far. But she did. She meant every step. Every forged form. Every empty promise. She didn't cry for me. She cried for what exposure would cost her. And in that moment, I realized just how far she'd been willing to go to protect her lie. Not me, not the kids. Just the illusion. I left the house that night and never went back. I didn't pack a bag. Didn't take anything but my keys and my name, the only things that still felt like mine. The air outside felt different. Colder. Cleaner. For the first time in 15 years, I was no longer inside the story she'd written. But the kids? They still called me dad. They didn't know. They didn't understand. And how could they? I was the only father they'd ever known. Biology didn't matter to them. My name was their bedtime song. Their safety net. Their comfort. And I still loved them. That was the hardest part. Leaving her was easy. Letting go of them. That's the part one still haven't figured out. She vanished. But her lies still live with me every day. She didn't leave a note. Just a silence loud enough to fill the rest of my life. Love without truth is just performance. And I played my part for 15 years. A month after I walked out, she disappeared completely. New phone number. Bank accounts drained. Car abandoned in a mall parking lot. Gone, like she never existed at all. I filed a police report. I met with a lawyer. They asked questions I didn't have answers for. What's her real name? Does she have any living family? Could she be in danger? And all I could say was I don't know. Because I didn't. Because after 15 years of marriage, 3 kids, and a house filled with photos, I never really knew who she was. I still get mail addressed to her. I still get messages from school asking if mom will be picking the kids up. And every time I have to explain, I feel the lie echo in my own voice. She's not here. She's not coming. And the part no one prepares you for? The part that really hurts? She didn't leave a note. Not for me. Not for them. Just silence. Like we were a dream she woke up from and chose not to remember. Emotionally, I'm still unraveling. Financially, I'm trying to recover from the debts she hid in my name. Spiritually, I don't even know what that word means anymore. Because I thought marriage was about trust. About knowing someone. About building something real. But love without truth is just performance. And I played my part for 15 years. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear her laugh. Not the laugh she gave me, the real one. The one I caught on that recording. Soft. Flirtatious. Free. That laugh wasn't mine. And maybe, neither was she. I visit the kids when I can. We talk. We try to smile like things are normal. They still call me dad. They still reach for my hand when crossing the street. And I hold it. Because whatever else was fake, that part never was. They didn't choose the lie. They just lived inside it. Same as me. I may never know who she really was. But I know who I became trying to love her. And that man, he deserved better.